Hi there. You're the early birds. Welcome.
Hello. Hi, Liz.
Hi there. Hi there. Welcome back. For those of you that were at the residential one earlier, good to see you.
Very helpful information.
Oh, I'm glad.
I was looking at some of the other regional centers that we are vended with, and I haven't seen any webinars yet.
Well, I have to say it's sort of six of one, half dozen of the other, because as you heard in the last meeting, I only have so much information to
Right.
share.
But but it was helpful.
I'm glad. I'm glad to
It
hear
was
that. Thank you for
helpful.
that
Yeah.
feedback.
I just told everybody no vacations during Thanksgiving and
Just
Christmas.
forget the holidays this year. I know, right?
We got a lot to do.
Yeah. How's your voice, Doris?
Better than this morning, but
Oh,
it's
good.
still a little scratchy.
Okay. We'll try not to make you talk too much. Welcome, welcome. We're just at 1:30. We'll let everybody get on board. I have a feeling we're going to have a lot of little boxes in this meeting, and that's good. Okay, we'll just give it another little minute here, and then we'll get started. Okay, all right. Well, want to be mindful of everybody's time. So thank you so much on a Friday afternoon for joining us for this hour to talk about rate reform. I'm Liz Harrell. I'm the manager of our Community Services Department here at the Eastern Los Angeles Regional Center. I appreciate your coming to this meeting to hear about where we're at as a system with rate reform and what we know, what we don't know, and what the next steps look like they're shaping up to be. We are holding a series of these meetings. We have another one right after this. We're hoping our voices all hold out. And so today, this meeting at 1:30, we're focusing on what the department has referred to as day services. So those are providers with service code 055, 091, 110, 505, 510, 515, and 525. So this is a targeted conversation for folks that provide those services. So I want to just start out with an overview on rate reform. I think you all know it's been going on for a while, right? It has been rolling out in phases. There was phase 1 a couple of years back. You got a little bump up. Phase 2 came along, got a little bump up. Phase 3 is the final bump up. Phase 3 has some other things involved besides just getting a little bit of a more bump up, right? It's the last bump up on the rates. So first off, that last bump is not made whole unless you participate in the service provider directory. We're going to talk about the service provider directory later in the meeting, but you're going to hear it over and over and over again in like a broken record. You got to sign up for that service provider directory, and you got to do it now. You will get a lump sum incentive payment on top of ensuring that you get the full rate increase. Okay. The other piece, though, and what we really want to talk about with you today, the other piece of rate reform phase 3 has to do with the intent of the Department of Developmental Services, DDS, or the department, interchangeable, you'll hear me call it all three. What the department intends with rate reform, and this has been coming for a good solid 6 or 7 years now, is the alignment of service codes, the streamlining of service codes, ensuring that services defined at ELARC are the same as services defined at Redwood Coast, or the same at Sangay Pomona, and really streamlining those service codes and kind of cleaning things up. And so to that end, we are now faced with having to bring our service codes into alignment. All the regional centers and all the service providers that are affected by rate reform really have to take a look at their service code and say, does this still apply? And on top of that, there are service codes that are going to go away. Okay, and this group of the 8, I think, or 9 that I listed, at least 5 are really intended by the department to not exist anymore. And so that doesn't mean your services go away. It doesn't mean your good work goes away. It just means we have to figure out what service code you fit into. And there is a pretty tight time frame for us to figure that out. Why haven't we talked about this sooner? What are we going to do? Because we're waiting for the department to give us further direction on it. They've started to give us direction on it. And so the intent of this meeting is for me to tell you what we understand so far, what we've been told by the department. But I don't have anything in writing from the department yet. I have to emphasize that. Without something in writing from the department, without a directive or guidance document, it isn't real until it happens, okay? Those tend to come out on Friday afternoon. So I'm hoping we're going to get that fairly soon. You know, because you made it to this meeting, you're probably getting bombarded with emails from me on behalf of me, from ELARC, ELARC e-notifications. We will get every bit of information out to you as soon as we can. But I'd like for you also to know how to take responsibility to stay up to date, because we get it as soon as it's out, you can too. So I'm just going to share very quickly. The best thing to do is to go straight to the DDS website, which now I'm noticing they just put this up about the provider directory. It is a big campaign to get everybody to sign up for that, right? Okay, so on the front page here, we've got rate reform. Click that little box. You're going to get all the tabs for rate reform. What you want to do is go over here and just make it a habit to check the directives and updates every day. I really strongly advise you do that. But one thing for sure you can do is if you sign up, if you open up one of these, see this right here, join our email list, join their email list. You will get this in your mailbox. You will get updates from the department in real time about rate reform, about directives that have been released, about the status of the provider directory, etc. So it's really important to do that, to stay up to speed on rate reform. Additionally, again, going back to the rate reform page, if we go over here, the department is having webinars. They had one yesterday with our adaptive skills and behavioral service providers. They gave us, I think, maybe 2 days notice, 3 days notice. So it's real important to try and get these as soon as possible. As soon as we hear, we put the word out and cancel everything we're doing so we can go to these meetings. I know you're going to want to do that too, because there will be a webinar for this group. There will be a webinar for all of you that the department's putting on from the department. But I can tell you now, you're going to get short notice. So we will do our best to get the word out to you about that. Okay. So what I'm going to be doing today, I want to just talk with you again about, because I don't have something in writing yet, I want to tell you what our understanding is of the impact on the service codes for day services, what we understand and what we anticipate and what we do know. I can say right now, we're probably going to have more meetings, okay? Something to know about some deadlines around rate reform. There's 3 important deadlines around rate reform. January 1st, 2025, which is just weeks away. January 1st, 2025, the rate increases will be put into place, okay, for the service code that you are currently under. So no matter if you're an 055, a 515, that's fine. January 1st, you're going to get that rate increase. Remember, you're not going to get the whole rate increase unless you sign up for the provider directory, right? But you're going to get that rate increase on January 1st. Now, this alignment that I've shared with you that the department is rolling out, that has to be done by March 31st, which is a very tight timeline. That alignment will involve taking a look at the services that you provide, taking a look at the new definitions and requirements of these services that we don't have in writing yet, right? Okay. Taking a look at those and figuring out, where do I belong? Oh, I still belong here. Okay, no, I'm this, I'm that. And signing an acknowledgement form and taking a look at your rates. Okay, that's going to be some work on your part. We'll get that out to you. I'm going to repeat this. I'll go through it and I'll show you some stuff, but I just wanted to kind of walk you through it now. We'll get this information out to you and we'll have a deadline for you to get it back to us so we can work through that so that by the 31st, you're in the service code that still exists, that applies to you now with the rate for that service code. Then the other deadline is December 31st, 2025. So about a year from now. By then, all the IPPs and IFSPs, the planning team decisions, they all need to align with any changes to your services. Okay. So I just wanted to walk you through those deadlines. All right. So what do we know about day services? I'm going to structure this meeting a little different, team. I'm looking at Doris and Jessica and team, because day services, I'm going to actually start with the special circumstances directive that came out, and then we're going to take a look at the rate table, okay? Because what we do know was released, and we've known this was coming. We do know there are certain service codes that will be eliminated, some that may be grandfathered in under what's called an exemption process. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to share my screen. We're going to go back to the DDS website, and we are going to go to rate reform, and we are going to go to directives, and the directive that was released. And I'm going to ask some person out there to start dropping things in the chat for me as I open them, if you can follow along maybe and do that. Otherwise, I'll go in later when Doris is talking and do it if that doesn't work for us. Okay, so this is a directive that was released on October 30th from the department, and it's called the Special Circumstances Directive. All right. The first part of this directive says what I just told you. It has the January 1st date, right? The rates are going to go up by March 31st. There needs to be that alignment, and that, of course, by the 31st, there needs to be the updates to the IPPs and the IFSPs as needed. The next part of the directive speaks to AB 637 waivers. These are waivers that the department rarely grants to regional centers to be able to kind of maybe bypass regs or statute and set up special rates if a regional center has had an AB 637 approved. We have to take a look at that rate and where it aligns with the rate models. Doesn't apply to what we're talking about today. This part does. Okay, so for the purposes of this meeting, I'm going to read this. The rate study developed rate models for most services individuals receive. Additionally, the rate study recommended reducing or eliminating the use of some service codes, as these codes effectively duplicate services provided under other service codes. As part of rate reform, existing service providers will transition to service codes and associated rates that align with services actually provided. However, some providers deliver services that do not align with services defined in statute regulation or the directives issued as part of rate reform. Now, those are the directives we haven't got yet. Often, these services use one of the codes listed in Attachment A, which we will look at in a moment. If a regional center determines a provider service doesn't fit into any of the updated service descriptions that we have not gotten yet, the regional center must request department approval to utilize one of the service codes listed in the top table of Attachment A. We'll look at in a minute. Requests for existing providers must be submitted using the form by December 31st of this year. That's our tight timeline, okay? A link to an online form will be provided. Have it yet to each regional center. Attachment B shows the example of the information. I'll show you that to you in a minute. And the existing service code and rate can continue to be used while the department's decision is pending. The last part of this directive talks about vendors that are coming in new vendorizations, and the application of the rate models and rate reform. All right, so let's take a look at Attachment A. Now you're going to see service codes that you may be providing services under. This is what we're talking about. Okay, so the top table, okay, starting January 1st, continued use and new vendorization for services using these service codes require DDS approval of an exemption using the online form that we don't have yet. Current providers may continue using these service codes through the 2025 transition to new service codes and don't need to request an exemption, okay? But they do have to, again, if you're transitioning to the new service code, right? Okay, so you're seeing here, so for us, we're looking at 055 and 525. Some of you may be providers. What that means is that if you are an 055 provider, you do need to take a look at the new service code requirements and descriptions when we have them and see, does your program better align with those? Because the department originally intended to just get rid of these. These are going to be case-by-case exemptions, but the department would prefer to have everybody transition to the new, right, service codes. So if you're impacted here, you have the ability to potentially request an exemption in partnership with your regional center. Okay, starting January 1st, 2025, the following service codes are transitioning to new codes and no longer can be used. These ones are going away. Current providers may continue using these service codes through the 2025 transition. So what does that mean? The 2025 transition is that till March 31st, okay? That's the transition period we're talking about. So the 2025 transition to new service codes and don't need to request an exemption. Okay, so we're seeing several here, right? 505, 510, and 515. Now you can see what it says here about these ones. They all have this sort of the same thing. Not sort of, they are the same. They have the same language here. Transitioning to new service codes, such as day service code, day services 531, behavioral day services 532, or medical day services service code 533. So if you are vendored in one of these service codes, you will need to take a look at the descriptions for these service codes and see, where does my program best fit? Okay. So I'm going to share another document with you. The next step, hang on, back. All right. The next step of rate reform and this transition, and we're not at this step yet, and this is just a sample, again, is once we know and we have it in writing from the department and we know what those descriptions are, what we will be doing is sending you an acknowledgement form that's going to look like this. It'll be one, our intention is to have it be a nice fillable form that you just submit to us electronically. All right, and then we can track the data. Along with your what's called rate workbook, so you can see what the rate is, okay? We don't have that yet to give you. That's what we're waiting, again, for the directives from the department. But this will be the acknowledgement. This is the one that they've developed for our AST providers, but it'll look very much like this, where you would sign on what the services are provided, what the service code will be, that you did see the rate workbook and you're signing on and attesting to the new service code. That's what the future holds on a very tight timeline. We are not launching it yet because we need that direction from the department. I'm going to now give it over to Doris to share the rate tables and to elaborate on any of the information that I just went over. Thanks, Doris. And you are muted, Doris.
I am muted and I'm on the wrong page here, but here we are. DDS website, rate reform. I'm going to go to the main rate reform page and rates and models. And I'm going to show you some examples that we will need to have that written guidance in order to for you to really make any kind of business decisions on this. So each of the regional centers has their own table. If you go into the complete models, you're going to see the assumptions that those rates were based on. Those assumptions don't need to be followed as if they were regulation. They were the assumptions that built the rate. The rate models is an Excel, and I'm going to go over to that. And a day in employment services starts on 87, but I'm going to start first at the top. It explains the rates. This is the full rate as for every provider who signs up for the directory. This is 100% of the rate, the fully funded rate. The base rate will be 90% of this, and then 10 will be a quality incentive payment. You want to pay attention to the the revised rate as of January 2025, column D. And I'm going to go down to the 87, and we'll run through a couple of examples. So let's say you are currently a social rep and you're running at a 1 to 8 or a 1 to 10. You might want to look at those programs. If you're doing a full day, there's the option to have full days in day program. I know earlier in the rate reform, everything was going to be converted to hourly. At this point, no, there is still the per day billing available. These little asterisks, the double asterisks, I'm going to go down all the way. Sorry for the scrolling. Community-based rates are used instead of center facility-based rates. All along through the other phases, there has been a community-based rate and a facility rate for the day programs. That is no longer a distinction. There's only the one set of rates. All right, so you're going to look at your current program. You're going to see, is it a behavioral program? There are, again, the hourly and the day. Your ratio is 1-3. This is your service code. A 1-3 behavior management code is going to slide over 532, depending on, does your program meet the new qualifications? Medical management is a new day program category, and that will be assigned the 533. In-home day programs will continue, and then there is the opportunity for participants to direct their day supports, and there is the supplemental day program support, which will remain at service code 110 at an hourly rate. The full benchmark rate will be 3206 as of January 1st. Any particular part of this table that you'd like to have me focus on, or any specific questions on this before I stop my share so we can all kind of see each other talk? All right.
I have a question, Doris.
Mhm.
For the day program, the 531.
Mhm.
So for example, if you're in one of the service codes that needs an exemption, you can just move to 531 instead of staying in that service code and keep the same staff to consumer ratios?
Yes. And we'd have to look at the qualifications for the new when they come out and see if that really is a match for your program. Hopefully it is. And then
Okay.
I think I was about to steal Liz's thunder on the acknowledgement form. But yeah, if you propose, the regional center agrees, the form is filled out, and everything is good. So
Yeah. And there's a question in the chat, under what code would the social rec code 525 be considered now? So what needs to happen is we need to have the updated requirements for the service codes. And then once we have that, we meaning us and you're going to need to take a look at those and say, based on the services I'm providing now, where do I fit? Where does this fit? So I can't answer that question. It's almost like an IPP. It's very individualized, right? It's dependent on the kinds of services you're providing, and it's depending on the description of the service codes that we are waiting for information on. But you can start thinking about and taking a look at, again, what Doris shared. Is it maybe more of a community-based day program? You're going to have to take a look at that when those descriptions come out. Is there anything anybody, Doris or Jessica, I know Jessica was out there too, want to add to that? Okay. All right.
All right.
I have a question on the list you put on screen, the first list you put on screen.
Yes.
With the 525 or 55.
I'll bring
Are
that
all
up.
those service, yes, are all those service codes and programs going to continue receiving referrals next year? Or has the department said anything about that?
That's a good question. So there should not be a disruption to services. Okay? There should not be a disruption to services. So when we think about referrals, if you're an existing program and you're vendored for 055, right? And you're providing services and you're still trying to figure out, what am I now? Am I a community-based day program? What am I? there still should be the ability to refer to your program, right, during that process. And then that's why there's that period of time all the way to the end of 2025 to get the IPPs to align and the planning team to align. So I wish I could give you just a totally straight answer, but I don't think that the answer to your question is the department didn't give us an answer on that. I'm telling you how I'm interpreting that. We don't want to disrupt things for people, for their lives, for you. We want to keep everybody going here, but there is going to be this weird time where you're figuring out, where do I land? You shouldn't have to stop your business or stop taking referrals, but there may be the circumstance where you would have to, right? Because you're like, oh, we have to I don't know. I can't run your business for you, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? It could impact. But on an ideal situation, we should just flow through this. Right? Doris, you look like you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I tend to be a little gloomy, Liz.
I know.
So if you decide that none of the models fit, and and that you've had enough of the DD system in California, please talk to your community services liaison early in those conversations, so that we can try to work out the best exit plan possible. I think it's way too soon to be starting to think about that. The intention is that you're going to be providing services, and that the consumers are going to be getting the services that they are in need of, and that the system will continue as seamlessly as possible, which kind of goes into Paula's question about the need for revised program designs.
Right.
The intention is that the guidance from DDS will supersede the existing program design, the existing Title 17, and that by signing that you are in agreement with that new rate model and new service code, that is the agreement between the regional center and the provider, that you will be meeting the qualifications as stated in the guidances. So no need to start revising your program designs. We will see what the guidances say.
Another question that I have is from that attachment A. If there are programs under any of those service codes that currently are above the benchmark rate and are being held harmless till July 1, 2026, if we make the change from that service code to one of the acceptable service code, will DDS still honor the high rate or the above the benchmark rate till July 1, 2026?
Okay, so I'm going
Do
to
you
walk
understand
through
what
this
I'm
with Karina.
saying?
That's a lot of question there, yeah. So if you're a 510, right, which is just going away, right? Okay, and you move over to 531, okay,
Yes.
you're going to get the 531 rate.
So what happens to the idea that they're going to hold harmless till July 1, 2026?
So hold harmless applies if you are continuing, if you make it through this transition with still the same rate. But in this situation, you wouldn't, because you're going to be in the new service code and new rate. Does that make sense? That's our understanding of it.
I don't like the answer.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question. Sorry to interrupt. Gerard Care from DESI here. Quick question. So with those codes being done away with, And if I'm understanding correctly, there's really not a whole lot we can do until we get that description from DDS in terms of the new service codes and alignment, correct?
Right.
Okay. All right. So I have tons of questions, but I will wait till that comes out.
And then we'll be here and do our best to answer them, right?
Wonderful.
We'll probably have
Thank
to
you.
have more sessions. This is one meeting of about 10 we're doing, right? You were in a different one. I recognize you, right? So,
Mhm.
and there's only so many of us. So we're going to try as much as possible to equip you with the information to make these decisions. And then we'll have workshops where we work together on them, as much we can to equip you to through this process, and then if necessary, have one-on-one sessions in those unique situations that you may be facing. This group, I think, is going to have the unique situations a lot. So yeah, I can kind of anticipate that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure, absolutely. Yes, Doris. And then I'll move on.
And you can look at the grid I was showing you and see, is your program essentially a day program? Are your participants attending a full day program and yours is not substituting for that? Is your program employment? You could look at the employment descriptions there and look for your those models to come out, the guidances for those, and and then hopefully you'll have a better idea once you see all of the different choices.
And I would just add to that, dust off your program design because your program design is what we're going to be looking at to fit you into where we think you fit with respect to the new services coming out and those descriptions. So again, being true to your program design and what you were approved for. So just take a look at that again, and that'll help guide you too.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm 515. Are we going to be restricted to either be 531, 532, or 533? Or if I feel that we actually fit somewhere else, would that be something I could?
Now would be the time
about?
to do that. No, you are not just restricted to those.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Before we talk about the provider directory, any more questions on this part of the discussion?
Just to clarify, 055 service codes, we just have to sign an exemption in order to continue services for the year of 2025 to identify a transition as far as like another service code, correct?
I'm going to say it back because the way you said it isn't what I understand. So let me be clear. Sorry, that's okay. And that's because it is confusing. So for 055, you want to take a look at, if you're doing 055 services, when we get the new descriptions, you can say, do any of these fit? Okay, you can be starting to think about, is there anything else that fits or works instead of 055? If you, after doing that, and as Jessica said, looking at your program design, say, we're in 055. We got to stay 055. You let us know that. We have to do this before the end of the year. You let us know that. We'll meet with you. If we come to an agreement that, yeah, you know what, it makes sense. You got to stay in 055. Then we would put in a request to DDS for an exemption. Those are considered by them on a case-by-case basis. So I want to be clear for our 055s. It isn't like, oh, I just have to ask for an exemption. The department is going to be very selective about that. So they do want you to really look at where else can I go on that. Okay. Now, if you are going to transition, if you do say, okay, yeah, no, I fit in, a 532, some other service code, right? Then that's when, yes, you have this time to transition, right? Until March 31st. You will transition. And by March 31st, you'd be in your new service code with your new rate. So if that's what you said, Beatrice, then I would say yes, but I wasn't clear that that's what you said, so I thought I best repeat it.
Because I kind of missed the beginning. So yes, that's kind of what I meant.
Okay,
So
good.
we're gonna be contacted by our liaison, or do we have to contact our liaison?
So right now, our plan, and again, we're waiting for the department to give us what we need. We have a plan where hopefully the way you got invited to this meeting was like through an email. We ran your service codes, we ran your contact info, we sent an email to everybody in these service codes and said, come to this meeting, right? That's what we're going to do. We're going to try and do, again, a mailing that's going to have a workbook, your rate workbook. It's going to have the acknowledgement form. It's going to have some instructions and say, this is your homework. Take a look at all of this and get back to us, okay? And we'll give you a deadline for that. That is our plan. We can't do it, though, until we get the next pieces from the department. But that's what sort of, to borrow what someone else said, a concept of a plan that we have right now.
And I think that's my concern, is the deadline is so short. And
oh, it's our concern too, Beatrice.
The holidays are here. You know, you have Thanksgiving, you have Christmas.
Right.
A lot of times the regional center, you guys take off time, and like people.
Nobody's taking any time off, Beatrice. And it's
no, I'm just saying, like,
we are with you 100%.
Like a lot going on. It's like the holiday season, and
it is. You're right.
You know, and it's and it's stuff that we have to deal with as a vendor as well.
You're right.
Because we get people that are off or whatever is going on. So it's just very overwhelming that they're giving us really short deadline.
It is. I agree. I suggest you tell DDS that, as we have been doing.
I can send them a message.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you 100% on that. 100%.
It's not fair. I mean, I mean, of course, nothing's fair, but at least give us till January 31st or something. At least get over the holidays and the madness that's going on. So.
And you know, sometimes at the last minute they do that. It is in statute, you must get the rate increase on the first. That's what's in statute. You must get the rate increase on the first. So you will get that rate increase on the first. The rest of it, but I'm just telling you what we know. Again, I'm telling you what we know based on what we've heard and what we know in writing. That's all I got.
You've been saying this for months. I just feel like whoever's in charge at DDS is a procrastinator.
I hear you. I hear you. I hear you.
A suggestion out, if I may.
Sure.
To build on what Jessica said about dusting off your program design, seeing what your 055 was intended to do. What did you say you were going to do? It's community integration training. You could look at the other services that have training in their name, independent living skills. You could look at adaptive skills. Adaptive skills guidance did come out this week, and it's a rough one. The qualifications are pretty intense, and it's grouped with the professional services and the ABA. But you know, there's those are some options to explore when trying to think about your services.
Thanks, Doris. And I just want to address the chat, Elton, and then I'll come to you just in regards to the question around which regional center you deal with your vendoring regional center. So for a user regional center, you would work with your vendoring regional center. And then we're setting up a way that we all can communicate on that. So go ahead. Yes, Elton.
Liz, if we look at 055 and we decide it doesn't fit in any of the new service codes, and we request the exemption for next year, we should assume by the end of the year, by December of 2025, that 505, the 055 is going to have to be transferred to one of the new service codes. If I'm reading that correct. The exemption would be for 1 year?
I don't see that.
Okay.
That's a good question. I don't see that. It doesn't mean that there might be future directive on that, but yeah.
Maybe worry about that down the road.
There's so much to worry about. Like Beatrice said, we got enough to
okay. I'm not gonna worry about
Sorry,
it.
I'm just like, I don't like being late. I don't like being late on deadline. I just like my
Right?
brain is like going crazy right
If we're
now.
all, if you're an A student, this makes you crazy. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's not in the syllabus. Where's the syllabus?
Yeah, it's-
Exactly. Yeah, no, I hear you.
You know, Elton does bring up a good point because I
Yes.
think in our minds we were like, well, if the exception is being granted and approved by the department, then you would continue to be an 055. But I don't think any of us ever thought to ask, well, for how long?
For how long?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the
And that's something
special
we can take to
circuit,
office hours. We have office hours every Wednesday with the department, and certainly we ask them those kinds of questions. So we'll be sure to ask
Yeah.
them that. Thank you. Well, let's talk about the provider directory. I'd like to introduce, I'm happy to share that community services here at ELARC, we've grown a little bit. We've added a new supervisor, Monique Perez. You may know Monique. And Monique has a new unit that is growing at the moment, but part of the new unit are some new positions of rights and vendorization coordinators, and they have a whole bunch of work to do. One of the tasks is the management of the provider directory. Now, I know it feels like I'm just passing the buck to the department, but I'm passing the buck to the department. The provider directory is also run by the department. So there's only so much we can do, but we are here to support you through that process. Because remember, when I started the meeting, I was talking about you got to get in the provider directory. You have to. And so I'm going to give it over to Monique for her to talk a little bit more about that process. Thanks.
Thank you, Liz. Hi, everybody. My name is Monique Perez. I am the supervisor in Community Services Unit 3. As Liz mentioned, my unit is overseeing the provider directory for the Eastern Los Angeles Regional Center. And what that means is we are able to approve or decline the RITMs. If you are familiar with that term, it's the item numbers that come into us from the portal after a provider has already submitted their information for verification. I don't have an estimate on the turnaround time of when we receive the information from when you input the information, but some of the items are being approved automatically, and other items are being reviewed by myself or by my team. I wanted to share a couple of links with you, but I also wanted to share some updates. I know earlier in the meetings, I had a couple of providers reach out to me because I put my contact information. And in trying to assist them, I received some replies from DDS that provided some clarification. So I thought that might be helpful for this group and maybe subsequent groups. But let me go ahead and start off with the just general links. The service provider training video is available on their website. So let me include that if you haven't seen that already. I'm going to include the link to the training video. There is also a provider directory email address and a phone number, but I will follow up with more information on that based on what I mentioned earlier. There is also an option to sign up to be added to the provider directory email distribution list to receive future communications. That's how I am getting some other information. So I just included that information into the chat. And earlier this week, I was informed that there is an extension to the deadline, but that is for the deadline to verify information that's already come to the service providers. I don't believe it's for new information that you are inputting. So I wanted to drop into the chat some information. So sorry, I'm toggling between screens. Hang on one second. So as I mentioned, I was assisting another provider, and they now have in that email address, when you send an email, it now has this message for you. Oh, I think it's too many characters here. Hang on one second. It has a couple of ways to troubleshoot. It pretty much says thank you for your message, and it gives some items to troubleshoot. Okay, I'm going to just break it up. It's too large. So in case this applies to anybody, it says thank you for messaging, and it has, if you can't locate your registration email invitation, search your inbox, your junk or spam folder for an email from, and it gives the email address where that you should look for that would be sending you an invitation. So I don't know if that's helpful to anybody here. I just wanted to include it just in case. If you still can't find an email, there may be another issue preventing its delivery. We will record your email address provided. Outside. Our IT team is working to resolve any issues. And they do say that they have a lot of emails that are coming in. So they are asking that folks be patient with them to receive a response. This is the second part of that outgoing email. For step-by-step instructions, the training guide that I had already provided. And another issue, they are asking to please provide as much detail as possible about the issue and include your vendor name, all vendor numbers that report to your organization, email, and contact person. Okay, and I think I had one more item that I wanted to share. So a second provider I was assisting reached out, and they received this message here. Okay, the provider directory survey is no longer available, and no new vendor information can be added at this time. Again, I just received this information. Once the provider directory is able to accept new entries, we will post instructions on our website. I did ask for clarification from the department if that means the extension, if that is just for verification purposes, and I did get a response. Okay, I'm gonna drop that in here also. If a provider has either submitted a survey after the 9/6 deadline or has never completed that step, remember there was an initial step, it was a survey to gather information. They will not receive the email to complete the second step. So that email that is sent to providers, that's the second step that they need to verify. And DDS is working to upload all the surveys and information that were submitted after the deadline. Once the late submissions are uploaded, then they will once again make the survey available. If you have questions, I'm going to put my contact information here, and maybe I can help assist you. One thing that I am not able to do is input information for you. My team is only able to approve or decline or reject. Any edits that need to be made need to come from the provider.
Does anybody have any questions for Monique about the provider directory?
No, maybe I do. I did email the provider directory, I guess the email where we have questions. And I did get an email back saying that my survey was complete, and it says your information was not included in the first batch of uploaded into the portal. And then it said we are currently uploading vendor information in batches. Registration emails will be sent out on Tuesday, November 12th for those who have been uploaded into the system. So it says they can continue monitoring for updates, but I still haven't gotten anything. And I'm just, I guess, again, my concern is not getting it or getting it too late in the month.
I'd like to respond. At one of our recent office hours with the department and the regional center staff, they did say they were going to drop 400 shortly, and then the week after that, they would do another 700. Yeah. And so hopefully that first batch.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Any other questions about provider directory? Okay. Well, then I thank you for your time. We are going to be transitioning. I'm noticing numbers going up, so I'm thinking people may already be signing on for the AST and behavioral services meeting. What I do need to do, and I'm sorry to inconvenience you, is I do need to close this one out because we were recording these separately so we can post them on our website. So if you want to stick around for the AST and behavioral services, you're going to need to jump back in because it's all the same link. So I appreciate your time today, all of the day services providers. We'll keep you posted. We'll keep in communication. For anyone who just joined, we're going to close this one out, and then I'm going to reopen it in about 2 minutes. Okay? Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.